United States President Donald Trump has announced a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs, except for China, effective immediately. Trump's turnabout yesterday came less than 24 hours after steep new tariffs kicked in for most trading partners, followed the most intense episode of financial market volatility since the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. Trump says he will be raising tariffs on Beijing to 125%, accusing them of being disrespectful. China has slapped the U.S. with 84% tariffs in retaliation to Trump's initial announcement. I'm joined now by Stephen Chan, Professor of World Politics at London University. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for your time. Quite an about turn on the part of the U.S. president, and speculation is rife that business leaders who have always been in his corner eventually prevailed, Elon Musk among them.
Yes, I think it was the business and the corporate community that was very, very alarmed at the prospective effects of Trump's tariffs on so many nations. And they had a united voice that this would be bad for the American economic outlook, bad for American business, and that Trump basically had miscalculated the effect that his tariffs would have in terms of the economy of the United States, which is, to a much larger extent than he would wish, dependent on the outside world. So it was not just international response. It wasn't just as were the threat of retaliation, although very little retaliation has actually been put into place, apart from China's. It was very, very much in America itself, business leaders fearing that this would be very, very harmful to businesses across the American whole enterprise.
Of course, I mean, analysts have been quick to point out that even your Elon Musks and others who may have eventually prevailed, they didn't do so because they are necessarily distancing themselves from him and from his ideas, but they were hurt where it matters, and that's with regard to their own businesses.
Yes, hurt where it matters. There's no concern in that circle for the outside world and what hurt might be done to the outside world. No concern at all that is in any way apparent. Very much concern for themselves, for possible meltdown in terms of their enterprises, in terms of meltdown in terms of the United States economy. There's no interest whatsoever in the global economy, and there seems to be very little awareness about the interaction that America has got to undertake with the global economy for America actually to have a great economy itself.
Of course, the spin from President Trump's office is that they're putting this pause so that because 75 countries are busy negotiating better deals with them, and so that must be allowed to take place.
Yes, there has been, as you say, far more than 70 nations asking for negotiations, and they would take time to be conducted. But I don't think that's the real reason for the pause in the tariffs. The real reason is very, very much alarm within America itself. I mean, many of the nations pleading for negotiation, such as Zimbabwe, who have already reduced all of their tariffs to nothing, don't mean a thing to America. They're not important. What might be important is the voice of allies, political allies to America. Israel has been hit with tariffs. Taiwan has been hit by tariffs. The whole thing seems so indiscriminate that it is time for a rethink if you could go down the tariffs road at all. But business leaders would rather that America did not go down the tariffs walkway.
I remember speaking to one academic two actually, last week, who were of the view that everyone wants to, I mean, America is such a big market that everyone wants to trade with them, suggesting, of course, that he could easily, Donald Trump, that is, ignore investor panic or even tumbling bond market.
No, that's not true. I think it's been pointed out to Trump that America is not invulnerable. That's a conceit. It's a very lazy conceit. It's part of the whole ideology of make America great again. The whole question about making it great again is why is it not great now? And it's not great by itself, but is dependent on a global trading system. This has got to be pointed out to Trump and his ideological followers, that America succeeds because it is a leading part of a global system. If it tries to punish that global system, it will wind up punishing itself. The mathematics absolutely bear that out. The way that the tariffs were calculated was bad mathematics in the first place. It seems that when Trump makes these decisions, he's not surrounded by business leaders, and he's certainly not surrounded by trained economists. It seems to be policies being made up on the spur of the moment. And give a one-day pause for reflection, it becomes quite clear that you can't make up these policies on the spur of the moment.
Why do you think, or what lies behind his decision to still slap China with a 120% tariff? After, of course, it must be pointed out, China retaliated when he made the initial announcement.
China retaliated, but at a lower level. Still retaliated at, high level, but lower than the American tariffs. Basically, I think what Trump has brought forward is what was always going to happen at some stage in the near and medium-term future. And that's a showdown between the world's two great economies. Who's going to be more powerful? Well, we're going to see this acted out now in the immediate future. And whether or not it's going to be America or China, neither is going to emerge from this unscathed. But I think that the Chinese are in a better position to survive this economic war than the United States is. But we shall see about this. The difficulty for the rest of the world is that none of us will be able to escape the fallout from this battle of the two giants.
Do you think he has changed the world somewhat, in the sense that whatever happens over the next 90 days, the world will be a bit of a different place after the next 90 days?
Yes, you're completely correct. The world will be a different place. Part of this difference is that no one's going to trust Donald Trump's America anymore. These tariffs come on top of swinging cuts in the foreign aid budget. Children around the world are being left to die without medicines. Already, the whole image of the United States as a leader of the free world is one which has fallen into disrepute. So the world that has changed is not going to be led ideologically, morally, or economically anymore by the United States. It's going to be a changed world, multipolar perhaps, a return to superpower rivalry, and it's not going to be a world in which America is made great.
Does that mean he will necessarily have less power, less influence? In other words, this move will have made even some of his closest people, like some of the people he paraded when he was making the announcement, that they will now see through his bravado and think twice before they actually believe him.
Well, whether they believe him or not, they certainly were impressed by his bravado. What's going to make a difference is in the pocketbooks of the American voters. When they see their cost of everyday living rising because of the cost of imports hit by tariffs, and a very great deal of these imports come from China. American industry actually can't exist without Chinese imports. When they see prices going up on all kinds of things, simply like Apple telephones, for instance, with so many components actually made in China, then they'll feel that this policy is not working for them. It's the effect on the pocketbook of the voter that did for Biden, and Trump played on that. It's amazing he doesn't think about that now in terms of the effects on his popularity. Yeah. But it will be that longer term feeling of anxiety on the part of your average American voter and income earner that's going to really turn the tables in America.
Yeah. Stephen Chan, Professor of World Politics at London University, thank you very much for your time and insights. And that's where we're going to leave it for this Thursday edition of Newsfeed PM. Thank you for watching, but do stay on as Colin Gambi and the News at Prime team are next. They'll bring you more news, views, and interviews.